Hey, this is Marcus Washington from MTC Media with the latest episode of In This Corner, where we take a look at boxing. We're going to start off with what happened up at MSG this past week when Edward Berlanga went against Alexis Ngula. Now, Berlanga was known as a knockout puncher, 16 victories, 16 knockouts, all this sort of stuff. He got his 20th victory, but it was very in a fashion where he looked lethargic, sluggish, even pulled out a Mike Tyson where it was obvious he tried to bite Angula, and his justification was he was throwing elbows. I was about to do a Mike Tyson on him. He kept throwing his elbows, and I didn't want to get cut. It was inexcusable. Now, after he thought about that statement for a while, he came back and he retracted it and gave, one of those half apologies for doing what he did. But I think he was frustrated. He didn't look good. He got hit a lot that night. Bloodied nosed early on, but came away with the victory. But it's one of those victories I think that did more damage to his to his legacy early on than it did help. And we're going to have to see what's going to go going forward. If he's not going to be the electric guy going forward, is he a top billing, and can he continue to fight the way that he fought on Saturday night? Only time will tell. Well, Saturday, there was another fight on Saturday, and this one was on the zone with Jaime Munguia against Jimmy Kelly, a fight that I think most of us thought that Munguia would, have an easier time of it. Now he ends up getting a fifth round knockout of Kelly, but that doesn't tell the story. Kelly absolutely positively dominated the first three rounds with his movement, with his jab. He certainly not only landed the better shots, he landed the harder shots the first three rounds. But you saw Munguia win the fourth round, at least on my scorecard. In the fifth round, he knocked down Kelly three times. I think what was more interesting, other than the fight, and the fight was very interesting, was the fact that he called out Charlo, saying, and you got to clean up the language, but he says, show some balls and stop hiding behind Al Heyman and come fight me. So that's certainly, you can't take that two ways. He also said, he fought at a catch weight at 165, and he would like to, he said, I'm ready to go back to 160 to fight for a world title or move up to 168. So didn't like the catch weight, but he escaped. But sort of like what we said about Berlanga, it kind of tarnished it a little bit, kind of took a little hit with the way that fight played out. And we'll see going forward what he does. But I think the big difference is that Berlanga was trying a new style, so to speak. And Munguia, it was one of those things where I think he was kind of caught off guard with some of the things Kelly was able to do early on, but he caught up to him in that fight in the fifth round. Now, upcoming this weekend, we have a big fight. This is an ESPN Plus fight with Artur Beiterbiev against Joe Smith Jr. Beiterbiev is 17-0, 17 KOs. Coming off of a win over Marcus Brown, where he had a nasty cut. In fact, they were talking about stopping that fight, and Beiterbiev made sure he didn't leave it in the hands of the judges or the doctors or the referees, as he knocked out Brown in the ninth round to ensure that he was going to come to a win. Brown had some success early on. Beiterbiev was taking over that fight anyway, and probably would have won that fight going forward. As far as Smith Jr., he is 28-3. Obviously, his most notable win was a win over Bernard Hopkins in 2016. By then, Bernard was pretty over the hill. It's not like he beat prime Bernard Hopkins, but that's his biggest win. Later in the week, I will take a look at that fight from an odds perspective, and we'll make some predictions on that. Last but not least, we had the ceremony for the Boxing Hall of Fame. They did three classes in because 20 and 21, there was some COVID concerns, so they didn't get their proper honor. But in this year's class, you have Floyd Mayweather Jr., Roy Jones Jr., Miguel Cotto, James Toady, female champions Regina Halmich and Holly Holm. You can't get bigger names. I mean, you cannot get bigger names. From the 21 class, it was Klitschko and Andre Ward, and the 20 class was Juan Manuel Marquez, Bernard Hopkins, Sugar Shane Mosley. So it was a good weekend for boxing. Those are great, great names from what I guess we would consider now the previous generation with all those guys. A lot of champions, a lot of wins, a lot of belts in that. And it's great to see that they got their just due and their honor that they so much deserve and earned. So that is our wrap up for In This Corner. We periodically record this when we want to catch up everything on boxing. Go to mtcwithmook.com. We cover boxing every week, multiple times a week, maybe not in video fashion, but there's articles and everything else for all the upcoming fights. So stay tuned with us. We also cover some fights live on site. So stay with me on all my all the channels, whether it's YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and social media, and our website, MTC with Mook. This is Mark Washington from MTC.